Hi, welcome to another video in the series of the beginning of digestion. Today we're going to be looking at carbohydrates. So what have we learnt so far? We have learnt about proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates. Proteins are digested by protease. Lipids are digested by lipase. And we have carbohydrates which are digested by amylase. Carbohydrates are long chains of sugars made out of glucose and digested by the enzyme amylase. Carbohydrates are also known as polysaccharides. Poly meaning many and then saccharides meaning sugars, and are digested into monosaccharides. So if we have the structure of a polysaccharide, what amylase does is it cuts it down into individual sugars. These individual sugars is most commonly glucose, but it can also be galactose or fructose. They are the building blocks of disaccharides. Di meaning two and saccharides meaning sugars. So these are disaccharides. There are three types of most common carbohydrates. So we have plants and we have animals. First, we're going to talk about plants. Plants store carbohydrates as either cellulose or starch. Starch and cellulose are made from light energy. We get this light energy from the sun. The sun energy gets absorbed by the plant. The plant then undergoes photosynthesis. The equation for photosynthesis is CO2 plus H2O becomes C6H12O6, which is glucose, and O2. Now we need to balance the equation. 6, 6. And 6 is one of the easiest things to remember because the way that I learnt it is the devil's number, which is 666. When the plant doesn't need the glucose right at that moment, what you get is a storage. Carbohydrates is a storage for plants. So it either stores it in potatoes, sweet potatoes, and pumpkins. We also have the storage becoming things like the cell wall, which is the cellulose. When animals digest the carbohydrates eaten from plants, a few things happen. Animals themselves can't really make starch and cellulose. Instead, they ingest the plants and they make glycogen. Glycogen is a form of carbohydrates that animals produce. So when an animal eats other animals, they can also ingest the glycogen and make it into their own. Starch and glycogen are both carbohydrates, but the structures are different, as well as starch and cellulose. Humans can only ingest glycogen and starch and not cellulose. This is due to their structure. Remember, enzymes are really specific due to their active site. Amylase can digest starch and glycogen, but their structure is like this. Amylase can break this up into individual sugars, but because of cellulose being a form like this, it is no longer complementary to the active site of amylase, and therefore it can't be digested. So what we get when we have cellulose in our body, we have the intestines and an unbroken down cellulose. And this just goes through the intestine, pulling any of the waste and things like that with it. So it basically just cleans out your intestines. As I said before, animals produce glycogen. Glycogen is usually produced by either animals or fungi, and that is their main storage, besides from lipids as well. In plants and animals, the carbohydrates are broken down into the sugars, also known as glucose. This can then go into the mitochondria. As we know from year 8 and year 9, the mitochondria is also known as the powerhouse of the cell. So what it does is it takes the glucose and then it goes through the Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle happens within the mitochondria and produces something called ATP. ATP is considered by biologists the energy currency of life. No processes occur in the body without ATP because ATP is energy. When carbohydrates in the form of glucose go into the Krebs cycle, it produces 36 ATP that can then be distributed to the surroundings. This process is called respiration. The equation for respiration is the opposite of photosynthesis. Instead of having carbon dioxide and water, we have glucose and oxygen becoming carbon dioxide and water. And as we know before, we need to balance this, where we have 6 in front of the water, 6 in front of the carbon dioxide, and 6 in front of the oxygen. I hope you don't get this wrong during the test. Thanks for watching this video. Next video, we're going to go through mechanical digestion and chemical digestion and the difference between the two. Most of the information from those two videos is scattered throughout the videos that I've shown you now, but I hope you'll learn some more. Thanks for watching.